Welcome to our book club. I'm Dylan, here with my teammate in the trenches, Keith. What's up, buddy?
Hey, my coach, D-Man.
My coach, my muse, my flame. Here at the Buddy Book Club, we're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing The Art of Winning, Lessons from a Life in Football by Bill Belichick. Hot off the presses. I think this was released like May 6th, and it is now the 29th, the day of recording. So we decided to do this because we are New England Patriots fans, born and raised. We're in our 30s, so I feel like we had like two prime sets of Patriots domination. Mm-hmm. We always look back and say things that happened during your formative years just stick with you. Like, I could watch a terrible TV show from when I was a kid, but if it had that memory along with it, I would still love it. When the Patriots went on their first run, we were probably like 13, 14. When you're going and hanging out with your buddies, it's not like, let's get drunk and do crazy stuff. It's let's just do crazy stuff, which is really the best time of life when you're just drinking grape soda, having a good time. And then we had a second run when we were getting drunk and doing crazy things.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided to do it. I'm sorry if this book isn't for you necessarily. We might get into how it's not for us, but anyways, if you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us for past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, slide into our DMs on X or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. Listen to us iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. 5-star reviews would be great. Download, subscribe, all that stuff. Keith, 385 on Goodreads. I didn't know how, and I really don't know how. I wouldn't even say like biographies, because that's not what this is, but like self-help books, because that is what this is. I don't know how they tend to relate on Goodreads, but I assume if you looked up some of the better ones, they would probably have pretty good ratings. Either way, 385, that means it's not up to the snuff, but we'll decide that here. Do you have anything to say before we get into Stock Up, Stock Down?
I have a book report.
Oh, Schneekies.
Yeah, I had to make up for it.
Was this part of motivation, or was this change, or was this adversity or perseverance? Which chapter did you decide to base your book report on?
He didn't really cover it. It's more religious, so I'll dive into it now.
Oh, so it's more Psalms, or maybe Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Yeah, Corinthians. Got it. Okay, well, without further ado, go for it.
I grew up in New England, and like any good Irish Catholic boy, I went to church every Sunday and counted down the minutes until it was over so I could grab a couple of donuts, and then head home and watch the Patriots. The whole religious thing didn't really stick for me. That is, until I found the Holy Trinity, or Duinity, or by God, in Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Belichick represented everything I believed in. Love for the game of football, history, teamwork, winning. When he traded away Drew Bledsoe or Cutler and Malloy or traded away Jamie Collins, I questioned him, but he proved me wrong every time. He divinely zigged while everyone zagged. He did his things his own way, all while being crucified by the media at every turn and having Satan, a.k.a. Roger Goodell, and the owners try to tear him down. Bill Belichick is my guiding light, the man I pray to. This book, however, isn't the Bible. I got a few nice tidbits from it, some interesting stories, but ultimately the problem is it's not for diehard football fans or Patriots fans. But it's also not really a self-help book for the average person. You kind of need to know football. So it's somewhere in between. But the man brought us 6 championships, D-Man. 6 championships, yeah. So he can do no wrong in my eyes.
You know what? That's a good Goodreads review. Like, if I read that on Goodreads, I would be like, this guy gets it. Because I did go through a few of them, and I was like, these people take this either too seriously or don't have any love for Bill Belichick in general. I will give that a A-. Let's get into some stock up, stock down. Keith, what do you have for stock up?
Stock up. The media is like mushrooms. Feed them shit and keep them in the dark. Stock up. Belichick and the media interactions are obviously stuff of legends. He shows up to the press conference wearing a tattered sweatshirt, could not give one fuck. He was given one-word answer saying we're on to Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. After a tough loss, like a really bad loss, I would tune in and watch the press conferences because no one hated losing more than Bill Belichick. Like, no one cared more. Yeah. Like, so it made me feel so much better. Like, the worst thing that can happen is you have a crushing defeat, and then the player is like, yeah, I didn't really care. It's like, whatever, we'll get him next time. And what the hell? Like, I care more than you do? That's not how it's supposed to work. Anyway, I found it interesting that he admitted that he played little games when he went to the media and talked to them. Like, a lot of times the media would ask him, like, leading questions that would have him answering a certain way, and he said that he would just go out and be like, no, I'm not answering that way. So I'd fuck with him. Which I'd never heard him admit. Mm-hmm. I thought he was always like being coy of like, oh, they have a job to do, I have a job to do, and like I'll do the best I can. But he admits it here that he's like, nah, fuck the media, pretty much.
He was doing the Super Troopers gags. Like he was basically going and being like, "Oh, what are we gonna do this time? The repeater, or do you want to do the meow?
Yeah.
Like you gotta get 5 meows."
Yeah.
He was just trying to like, I'm not gonna say this word in this press conference. So it was a game within a game for sure. There were few tidbits in the book, and I also enjoyed that one for sure. My first stock up is audiobook talent. Stock up. So
how dare you, sir?
we here at the Buddy Book Club, we listen to a lot of audiobooks. We love to read, but later in life we found that audiobooks are really our calling. I probably read, I don't know, how many episodes do you think we do a year? Like around 30 usually?
Yeah.
And then I read a few books outside of that. I read maybe 5 of them. The vast majority I'm listening to audiobooks. And as you listen to these audiobooks, you start to see talent prop up in different books. And I'm thinking about the guy who did Wool that also did a different book that we did. Or, you know, obviously Jim Dale only did Harry Potter, but as far as I know, because he's the GOAT. Bill Belichick shouldn't do audiobooks. I'm not even sure that Bill Belichick can read. He was having some trouble, and I know that you're going to take this personally because you also have your own issues reading. Granted, that book report was wonderful. Like it seemed like he had issues like actually reading his own words, and when he's trying to do his jokes, like his dry humor jokes, he's reading them. He's not doing them as if he was saying them. So it was very interesting because usually if someone writes a book about themselves, I love hearing it in their voice. You know, Malcolm Gladwell does it. It's really good. David Sedaris is maybe the best. Bill Belichick, I'm sorry, it wasn't the best hearing it from him, although it's a weird mindset because I'm also glad that I heard it from him because I felt like maybe I got to know him a little better or got to spend time with him. And because he gives those one-word answers in press conferences and whatnot, it was nice to hear him in a longer format, but at the same time, I don't sure the points got across as well the way he was reading it.
I had someone ask me, was this a ghostwritten book? And I said, absolutely
no.
I know 1,000% this was written by Bill Belichick because it wasn't written like your typical storytelling where, all right, here's a theme and now let me kind of create, you know, narratives around that theme or anything like that, or a typical self-help book. It was kind of a lot of non sequiturs and just random stories, and then he'd go on to another point, and I was like, wait, what? And I don't know if there was like pictures or something in the audiobook or the actual book that were like separating these things to make more sense, but there's some instances where I was just like, wait, huh?
It's like he pulled a Larry David and just told the publisher, no notes. I'm accepting no notes. And the editor would come in and they'd say, hey, this doesn't really make a ton of sense, or the way that it's set up, it just doesn't really pay off. I think the way you're looking at it, he said, no notes. I am doing no notes. This is my book. So, yeah, I appreciate the hubris. That's for sure. What about any other stock ups you got?
Being selfish stock up. I was a bit surprised to hear Belichick talk about having selfish people on your team is okay. Like that's something that you would think kind of really goes against the whole Patriot way mentality. But that is a culture that it was built, and that's just a label that's been applied to it. But there is a culture that is the Belichick culture that he's established, which was the last chapter, which was by far my favorite chapter.
Team, teammate, self, right? That's the whole point. Team, teammate, self.
Which he defined as more as like it was very, very military structure wise.
Yeah, and I like how he said that he pretty much, directly stole it from the Navy, which is shipmate, self, or whatever the case is. And it makes a ton of sense in a football setting. And I think him drawing parallels to other successful players or coaches who have grown up in military families, that's an interesting side of things. I feel like there should be like an economist study that or something along those lines.
Yeah, that seems like a Malcolm Gladwell thing.
For sure.
With that whole concept being uniformity, teamwork, all that stuff, the whole idea of having someone that's selfish and being able to still want those people on your team is an interesting ideal that I didn't think he would ever bring up and say, oh yeah, it's fine to have selfish people on your team. A lot of the way he drafts people and the players he brings in are very football team oriented and not like out for the personal gain is what I would assume. But he did make a good point, which I think in the real world brings up a good topic of the idea that you can have selfish people as long as you just align their goals with the team goals. So like, if you have a receiver and he's super selfish, wants the ball all the time, great. If we're, get him the ball more and if he's going to produce, awesome. If he doesn't produce, then he doesn't make as much money. That's basically how the team's going to operate anyways. It's, if he's not doing well, then the team's not going to do well, which seems like every job. I don't understand why every single job doesn't have this, where it's like the waiter mentality. If the waiter provides a good service and a good time for the people he or she's serving food for, they're going to get tipped more. The establishment's going to make more money. People are going to come back more regularly because they like the service they got. Like, why doesn't every company have some sort of payout where, especially if you're for a profit, obviously, that the better service you provide and the more profit the company makes, that you get bought into that? It seems like should just be every company. I don't know why that's such a very small sect of, like, only sales really gets it, or waiters, or like service people. It seems like everyone should be bought into the company.
Yeah, and there's a big push now for the service industry to go no tip, and it's just built in to their salary,
which will make the service terrible.
Well, awful. I'm sure there's a big debate around there, and neither of us really are in the know about that. But as a consumer of those things, like the service industry, like going to a restaurant, if I get really good service, I will tip more. Granted, the range is like 15 to 25, right? Like, I at least not me. Friggin' the wife will tip them 50% and will be living in a cardboard box on the street if she had it her way. But, if I get bad service, you're getting the standard 15%. I'm not going to go less than that. Like, I'm not a crazy person. But if it's for some reason really good, like I went to a place and they were just like giving us free stuff, and they just made it seem like with the whole point of going out to a restaurant, which is this is an event.
It's special,
but it also feels like home. Like, it's special, but it feels like home. So I agree with you there. Yeah, and I also liked his idea of, with these selfish players, the idea of, hey, you don't want to block, you just want to catch balls. But how about we have these plays where if you block the first time, and then the second time it looks like you're going to block, but then you'll catch a touchdown. So you kind of, it sets up. It's a setup. So that's how to like deal with selfish players. And then in general, just the NFL, something that I took from the book, and it's so obvious, but of course, is it's a huge pool of players. So you're going to have the whole gamut of personalities, the whole gamut of people who have different motivations for why they're there. So getting them on the same page is extremely difficult. And I think that's really what he did best. And I think that's why he wrote this book, was to show how he was able to manage and motivate these people and their expectations, and also keep them in line. Did we get that? I think so. Did he equate it a lot to us peons? Yes. That did not need that. I just could have taken it from the football side and drawn some of those conclusions myself. But I did like that idea in general, so I will agree with your stock up on that one. My next stock up is the old adage, never meet your heroes. So after reading this book, I feel like I have met Bill Belichick, and unfortunately for me, it didn't live up to it. We as Patriots fans, and maybe this is just the Boston media or whatever the case is, we've always heard that he may be gruff and unfriendly in front of the cameras, but in person, he's a jovial guy with a dry wit. And if you want to talk about the intricacies of football or World War II, he'll talk your ear off. He'll pull you, for hours, you can just sit there and talk about those things. In this book, and with him narrating it, he seemed more like one of those random people that the HR department at your company hires to come in and give this boring ass talk about like being a team player and how to keep your head down and bust your ass for a little pay, because that is the rat race and we're doing it for the greater good. You just seem like one of those people who started their own business and they just go around to all these other businesses talking corporate bullshit. Or someone that was in the Olympics 30 years ago and got a bronze medal, and now they're just a public speaker at offices because the HR department can get them for like $1,000, and they just do that every day. So I wish it was a little more from him, and I don't know. It didn't live up to it for me. So that's why I'm a little upset, because he is definitely one of my heroes from afar. Definitely one of one. Stock up, hand up, which is something we say a lot here. It's something that you, at least in my mind, you coined.
I think I stole that from Barstool, so I can't really.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Either way, hand up is just when you make a mistake. You say hand up. It could be when we're doing something on the pod, like I forgot to press record. Up, hand up. That's on me. It could.
That's a tough one.
It could be in life. We're playing Can Jam. I miss an easy one. Hand up. It's on me. Taking ownership for your mistakes. It's really important. And just either saying hand up or putting your hand up. It's good. Belichick, though, he takes it a little deeper. He says in his mistakes chapter, his favorite 4 words are, I fucked that up. And it's exactly hand up, except instead he encourages people to say, I fucked that up and own up to their mistakes. And I just appreciated his take on hand up because he pretty much has a whole chapter for it.
Yeah, that was one of the only things I would say that kind of did relate really well to the real world, where there's all these parallels trying to be made, where that one is like, okay, that's a good one. That's actually like one that makes sense, that you wish more people took accountability and just said, oh, my bad, like especially at work, where you've definitely seen the people that they've never done anything wrong in their whole entire life.
Yeah, it's funny because as I finished this book, we had some new hires on our team, and we do kind of one-on-ones with them, meet and greets or whatever the case is, and just extol our advice to them. And I just finished the book, and this was the only thing out of this whole book that's about self-help and management. This was the only thing I said to those people. I pretty much said, you're new, you're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not a problem, but admit them. Put your hand up, say I fucked up, whatever the case is, learn from it and move on. That's it. So
yeah,
took that from Belichick. Granted, I probably would have said that anyways. It's not like, hand up's our thing. You can get into stock down.
Insider info stock down. For a dude that's coached for 40 years, I kind of thought we'd be getting a little bit more interesting stories of like stuff you've never heard. But like a lot of this stuff that was told was frankly stuff that just a media person's already mentioned. For an organization and a person that are super secretive and not letting anything out, and you don't really know what's going on inside the building. This wasn't like here's the secret recipe. This was like a work hard. And here's an insider story of how the 2001 Patriots came out as a team. It's like, I've heard that story 100 times. I love it, but there's no other like insider info on that. Or
yeah, just give a little bit of something that we haven't heard before, even if it's related to that exact story. I'm fine with that.
There was some of that. I'm not going to say I knew everything, but at the same time, this is a guy, to your point, that someone asked him about the long snapper and the evolution of the long snapper, which is maybe the most forgotten person on any football team. Like, nobody cares about that. And he went on for 8 minutes just off the cuff talking about it. Mm-hmm. He has the knowledge. So what I wish really would happen is, and Michael Hawley did this. He wrote a book, Falling Around the Patriots, and it was an awesome book. I really, really liked it. And I thought we were going to get more of that, where he basically just followed Bill Belichick and the Patriots around and wrote all these stories of like insider info of like what it's like to be in the building and like how Belichick approaches things. And it was like incredible because it was inside the locker room.
Oh, really? I think I have that book and I never read it.
Yeah, I like. Oh. I mean, it was also a lot about the NFL draft, which I like. So he was like talking about how he loved Sean Taylor and all like he was trying to trade up for him and all these offers he gave out to get him. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, it's stuff you'd never heard before. But like, if he even like he talks about how he tried to trade Gronk and Gronk instead would retire. Like, tell me what the trade was. Like that would be interesting. Yeah. Like, oh, we were gonna move him here, and this is the reason we moved him. And it was a big mistake by me because obviously Gronk was vital to our team and like such an unselfish player, but I was thinking this when I did it, which was stupid. That would have been good. Like, that could be a great hand up right there, to get that and insider info. But we don't get any of that. What really needed to happen was someone sit in a room with him or follow him around for a year and just pepper him with questions and have him answer those and then create a narrative around that, rather than him just being like, I'm gonna sit down and write something.
Yeah, or if he says, hey, I want to do a book that is like the chapters are going to be things about dedication, roster construction, star players, preparation, improvement, moving on, mistakes, communication, adversity. I want to do a book that has those things and tell them that's your plan. And then they can ask you questions and then kind of fit those pieces into where they go. And then he can fill out the rest, pretty much say, here's because my stock down was anecdotes. Stock down. A good anecdote can save a book like this. Sprinkle in a few stories we may not have heard before, and I'm sold. The best one that we get is maybe the AB $3,000 raw milk story about how he's trying to figure out how to pay him back because of the stupid raw milk thing that AB's all upset about.
Oh, really? I thought that was such a zero story to me. I was like, it's $3,000. You guys are a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Who gives a shit?
It is a zero story, but I get how it fits into that narrative. How like random stuff can come up and you have to deal with it. And I'm sure he made it seem like it was something when, granted, he just told someone like, hey, give this guy his $3,500. Let's move on. But mostly we get the adaptability one, which is, oh, we went to a game in Buffalo on Christmas Day and we got snowed in and there wasn't any hotels. So we found a hotel in Rochester, and there happened to be a barbecue joint down the street, and we all had a great time, and Tom Brady chugged a beer.
Cool. Yeah,
that was
cool.
That
would
would
be cool to have more insight. If they gave us a bigger, like a background story of that night. Like,
exactly.
Awesome.
Like get some hot takes, because like we've heard some from like Edelman and other players about Brady doing this chugging contest or whatever the case is. But give us a little thing more. Like that also doesn't show you're adaptable. That just is like luck. You found a hotel in Rochester that had a great barbecue place down the street. So
not a good example, but I agree.
Cool.
What should happen when we become famous from the Buddy Book Club and if this becomes a massive podcast is if you're famous like this, you should journal every single day. I come home and I do the exact same thing every single day. I have nothing to write about. If you are going and traveling to Buffalo and then doing this and then there's a million stories to be had every single day if you're that famous. Journal, so you have stories so you can come back on and write this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if he really has time to journal. He seemed like a pretty busy guy.
Write down like, oh, those are the 5 things that happened today. Like, oh, it was a funny story, and you can then remember it when you go back and read it.
The book just needed better anecdotes. It's as simple as that. We just don't get anything. If he then ties anecdotes that we haven't heard before to his point, I'm more likely to 1, remember the point, and 2, enjoy reading it. What else you got for stock down?
Last one, being reminded of the real world whilst reading a book, stock down. Probably my biggest hate. We've said it once, we've said it 1,000 times. I'm trying to escape the real world when I read a book. You want to talk about football? I'll listen all day. I'll fucking listen to the cows come home. Tell me everything about football. Tell me 8 minutes on long snapper. I'm in. I'm happy about that. You want to talk about dragons? I'll get my second grade imagination out. I'm ready to go. I'll have that thing firing. Last thing I want to do is hear about you talking about the NFL cap structure and how it or like how to defend Terrell Owens and how that is similar to doing vlookups on my computer all day, and how that compares to my work. Like, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't hear it at all. I didn't sign up for this. If you want to talk about leadership, fine. If you want to talk about motivation or dedication or perseverance, all those things, fine. Just don't fucking tie my work into it. All right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Stock down.
100%. It's like having Ted Williams, one of the best hitters of all time, famous Red Sox, World War II fighter pilot or whatever the case is, having him say, oh, I'm going to write a book. This is going to be amazing. And then it's him equating all those things to being a cubicle monkey. I know how boring my life is. I don't need to be better. Like, I do manage people. So, yeah, sure, I could probably get better at that. But if I wanted to get better at that, I wouldn't be reading this book. I'd be reading a different book about managing people, not a book that is about football that is also about managing people. It's very odd. It is very odd structurally. Which brings me to my stock down, which is self-help books in general. This book takes self-help. If this was the only self-help book you read, which I'm going to guarantee that there's a lot of Patriots fans out there who saw this book come out. It's by Bill Belichick. He wrote it. He reads it. Yeah, I'm going to read this. And they see that it's a self-help book and they're like, oh, all self-help books must be like this, so I'm not going to read any more of those. This book just ruined the whole self-help book industry because I got nothing out of it besides that one mistake thing. It wasn't relatable. Even his comments about what we're doing as cubicle monkey managers in the business world, they weren't accurate. I think you had said that his girlfriend helped him do some relating to the real world, and she's a pageant model, so I have no idea what she knows.
She's
about
like 23 or 24 years old. Yeah, she's not been in the she's not been in the real world at all.
So I have no idea, but
the real world is an accounting job that you come in and work on Saturdays. I haven't done that, but that's what real world is. That's the terribleness of the real world.
And I've read some good self-help books, Atomic Habits, Outlive. You'll like this one, Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence. You could read that one and buck up on it. But in this book, Belichick says in chapter 14 on change, he says, you aren't listening to this book to learn about clock management best practices or the finer points of how to keep a team out of field goal range. Wrong, Bill. That's exactly why I'm reading this book. I want to know the finer points of how to keep a team out of field goal range, and then an anecdote of how you did that either during a season or a big game that mattered. That's what I want to know, because I don't know that stuff. That is totally out of my wheelhouse. That's out of the world I live in. I want to be part of that and know what was happening behind the curtains. There's so much in... Have you ever seen those... the Football Life that he mentions in here was really good. There's also, obviously, every time the Patriots come out, win a Super Bowl, they had this like video that would come out afterwards. And
like behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, like behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And Ernie, who he talks about in this book, who is like his best hire or whatever, like his buddy from Andover Academy or whatever the case is. Ernie has such good takes in these Super Bowl celebratory books. And he's also been on Julian Edelman's podcast and done a couple of stories about these big games. And they're exactly what you think, the behind the scenes stuff. He briefly talks about it in the Seahawks game, that Super Bowl, when, hey, normally you would take the time out there, but I looked over at the sideline. I saw that they didn't look prepared. There was a lot of frazzle going on that side. So I said, hey, let's not take the time out and we'll do what we got to do. That's kind of stuff I want to hear, but I want more. Give me more. Yeah. What led you to that? How is it to make that decision in such a quick moment? Like, do you feel the weight of that decision?
He also mentions just like working hard. He's like, yeah, I'm working like 16-hour days. I'm like, what does that entail? I would love to have like a day in the life of Bill Belichick. Like, what's he doing for 16 hours? And like, what's he looking for in film? What are the things that he's, that's what's interesting.
Yeah. When I was watching, when you used to watch Hard Knocks and when it was still good, and they would show the coaches taking a walk with their wife in the morning. He's like, I like to start the day, with a walk with my wife and the dogs. And they show the outside. It's 3:30 in the morning, and they're taking a walk. And it's like, oh my God, you're going to have a 3:30.
And every time I watch those, I'd always be like, Belichick would do this way better than whatever he's doing. You know what I mean? Like every single thing, I'm like, he'd be doing so much better than this. But I guess because he's trying to still coach, he probably just is like, I'm not telling the secret sauce, which then like, don't release this book. You know?
Wait for it. There's not like characters in this book. As a change here, I'm going to say, who were you happy to hear his take on, or that he spent pages writing about this person? And who do you feel didn't get enough love or you wanted to know more about?
Let me start with the second one first, because I think this book came out and there's a big controversy on, I forget it was like 60 Minutes or one of those, where they asked him why Kraft wasn't thanked, which, who cares? It's not a book about Kraft, it's a book about football. But that is until I read it and we get to the acknowledgement section. I don't know if you listened to that whole thing.
I did not.
It's about 1,000 people long. I'm not even exaggerating. I think it's 9 minutes long.
Oh.
Him just reading names. And on that list is like every single player, every single coach. He lists Roger Goodell as a thank you to him. When you put that in context, you got to say something about Kraft. Even if you hate Kraft, you hate Goodell, obviously. You got to say Kraft in there, right? So it was a fair question now that I had that context, because it is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a fair question anyways, because Kraft let you be the coach and GM. That doesn't happen.
That's true. But if he mentioned, I want to thank Bill Parcells and my dad and these other 3 people that helped me, and that was it, you'd be like, all right, well, it's not a book about Kraft. It's a book about football teachers and coaches, But he put everyone in there.
I think the only thing he said about Kraft was that there was issues with ownership when you're doing something. That was it.
Yeah. I rewinded this a couple times because I wanted to figure out what he meant by it. He said, the biggest mistake I made was putting the priorities of the football team ahead of the ownership goals.
Yeah.
That was the mistake. Which, trying to read between the lines of what that meant, what I think it meant is because he also left some breadcrumbs earlier in the book. He mentions that there's a lot of people he wanted to re-sign who didn't have enough money. So Vince Wilfork and
probably
Ty
Richard
Law,
Seymour.
He mentions all these people that he couldn't sign. And then he also says Tom Brady. So what I think that means is essentially ownership was like, we're going to give out whatever amount of money we want to Tom Brady. And he's like, I think we should give this amount of money. That's it. And then that got back to Brady, and essentially ownership's goals was to keep Brady at all costs, and his goals was to do whatever's best for the team. Mm-hmm. And he didn't want to do that. And ownership basically got mad. And then the other thing too, I think, is that someone else pointed this out to me, but Patriots in the time of his like last 20 years have spent the least amount of cash, even though it's a salary cap, they've spent the least amount of cash in those 20 years, or the second least amount of all the NFL. So on average, they've spent $30 million less than the top team. So his goal is probably to spend more money. In the last season, he did obviously spent a ton, and then they didn't win. And so the ownership's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, we don't want to spend that much money and have you lose still. So I think that was how I read between the lines. So that was some interesting Patriots stuff, I think.
Yeah, that's a good take.
What about you?
Well, what about, like, was there anyone that you were happy to hear his take on?
The 2001 Dynasty people. I really think he gave the flowers to all of them. Brewski, Lawyer Malloy, especially because Lawyer Malloy and, like, people like Lawyer Malloy, Ty Law, a few of those guys, Will McGinnis, that like ended up on other teams or he cut. I do like that he was giving his flowers to those people where you didn't know if, and even Mike Vrabel, he would give tons of flowers to, even though they have had a rocky relationship too. So I like that. What about you?
I liked James White. I thought he was a good one.
Oh yeah.
Because, he just shows that that's exactly the kind of person he's looking for in a player. Just super tenacious and, does their job, but then also can do anything. So that was a really good one. I like some of the Vrabel stuff, especially now that Vrabel's the head coach, and I know him and Vrabel have had their issues, but saying he's going to run with the DBs for sprints and stuff like that. He tried to stuff in a couple of jokes there too about how Vrabel would say, oh, why aren't the coaches weighing in? And he's like, now that Mike's a head coach, I'm sure he wouldn't want one of his players asking him that. It's like,
I think that the written jokes aren't that bad. I think the delivery is
that's what I'm saying. I think he in person could have said them fine, but for some reason he can't read. So when he's reading his own joke,
let's not
besmirch people who can't read.
What's the phrase there? That's like calling the pot kettle black, whatever.
It's like calling the pot kettle black. It's exactly what it is. Yes. I think Brady didn't get enough love. I mean, he's mentioned.
Are you serious?
Yes.
He gets. I thought he got way too much, or not way too much, but just a ton.
He's mentioned a lot, but in like single sentences. There's no deep dive. Like there is. He talks about that Tuesday morning meeting or whatever the case is when Brady would come in and the competitive nature between the two of them and how they would look at game film or Brady would see something and Belichick with that relationship almost was like, oh, you think you're better than me, kid? And so because of that, it like forced Belichick to work harder. So I liked that take of it, but I've seen videos of that. I think it might have been in A Football Life. I've seen videos of him and Brady doing that meeting. It was awesome. It was so good to see. So we can get more, let's get more in depth about this. How did you approach an actual game? Or here's an example of how Brady and I would take a game. I mean, also, this book for me took a turn for the worst right at the beginning when he said something along the lines of this book is about consistent winning. So obviously I have to talk about Brady. And then he immediately talks about Patrick Mahomes and showers praise on him for 3 pages. It's like, wait, what? You just said you were going to talk about how awesome and consistent Brady is at winning and his competitive nature, and then you just switched to Patrick Mahomes. So I think Brady gets mentioned a lot for sure, but for the amount...
Well, he has a whole page.
I know. It's like, 199, so here's a page to Brady. But I need...
Well, he only does it for his dad. Otherwise, so it's kind
of... Well, no, he does it for Bill Parcells, too, I think. His dad, Bill Parcells, and Brady. But... I just needed anecdotes. Once again, I just needed more Brady anecdotes besides a quick sentence about how he can chug beer and then how he's smarter than everyone else and works harder. Okay, cool. I know these things. These are things I know. Tell me things I don't know. What about love-hate? What'd you love about The Art of Winning?
I'll rattle some off. I think these are just stuff that I didn't know, so that's most of it's going to be. I didn't know that Terrell Owens, no one thought Terrell Owens could play, and even his medical staff were like, there's no way he's playing, and they didn't have a game plan for him for the Super Bowl. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that's cool.
I love the Julian Edelman. This was how the chapters I think should have started for all of them. It should have been Perseverance chapter, and it should have been Julian Edelman wakes up at 6 a.m. It's the Super Bowl morning. You write it almost from his perspective. Yeah. And he's doing hand drills. I love that tidbit of like, yeah, he wakes up 6 a.m. on Super Bowl morning, and because he does it every single
or make up like how it happened, but kind of like blur the truth with it. Like Bill says, like I woke up at 6 a.m. to go to get a coffee, and I walk outside, and Julian's with our strength training guy doing this on a, you know what I mean? Something along those lines. Open it with that.
Pad the stats a little bit if you needed to there. You had to make the story better. I agreed.
It just made me also want to do that drill. I'd be like, oh, I could do that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I did like the Cleveland and the Giants stories just because I never had heard those really, just because obviously they're before our time. There were some behind the scenes. Then I sent this player home during the Super Bowl, and I was like, I wonder who that was.
Yeah. Or like came in and cut someone and was like, oh, who did you cut because they were 5 minutes late to a meeting on your first day? I thought in general it was nice to hear direct from the man himself. I know I'm like shitting on this a lot, but at the same time, it's good to hear Bill Belichick in a long format about what's going on in his mind, even if it relates to self-help type stuff with tidbits of football. I'm going to soak it up. He's notoriously short and not to the point. So I appreciate him here and actually like hearing him talk for more than we're on to Cincinnati. And even in interviews, he's quick. So, and that's the only time we see him. So I felt like he was on his own turf with this one, and we were able to just kind of listen in. And unfortunately, it didn't live up to what my expectations were, but that's on me. I can't blame him for that. He wrote what he wanted to write, and good for him. I'm just glad I was able to kind of watch Peeping Tom on it. What about hates?
Biggest issue we talked about is the real world examples. I also read Mike Lombardi's book and it was very similar themes. It was like what makes a winning coach, essentially. And that was really great around the different cultures each of the coaches he's worked with have built and like what they're trying to do. And then like the playbook they've installed in order to craft a culture around certain things. It was like really, really like more football focused. I wish this book was similar to that. But the one example that really, really bugged me was he was talking about how to deal with the media. And he said, so a lot of times the media would bring up negative stuff that's happened in the past. And I would just correct them and say, right now, what I'm doing is X, Y, and Z, which I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to approach it, of like reset the stage and you can reframe any question, even if it's negatively asked. But then he goes on to give an example of how you can do that with clients when you're when a deadline is passed. And he's like, right now we're just focusing on the best product out there and producing the best results. I'm like, that's the worst analogy I've ever heard in my entire life. First off, the media is not a client. The media is not something anyone has to deal with outside of politics and entertainment. It's not a thing. It has no consequences on your job. It may hurt your image to other people, but it has nothing to do with your job. So it doesn't make any sense to compare it to them. What you said to them.
You're not going to lose. Well, you might lose your job if you mess up with the media, like bad. But if you fuck up with a client situation, you might lose your job. Or
what'd be more analogous is like a player comes in and players have contracts that say they have to be at a certain weight by a certain date for training camp or whatever the case is, right? They've signed contracts that say they need to be stipulations where they need to be. If a player came in and they said you're 15 pounds overweight or underweight or whatever you need to be, right? They said that to Bill Belichick, and the player just said, well, right now I'm working on getting better at each day, and like you just cut him like that. Like, so the analogy makes no sense. Or a client would just fire you. They're like, well, I needed it today because I need a project done today, and you didn't deliver it, so see you later.
Yeah. You had a deadline, you missed it. Sorry.
Exactly. That's how the real world works. I'm like so annoyed that not only are you using real work analogies, which is annoying, but also using them poorly. It just annoyed the shit out of me. But anyways, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah, I had that, so I'm not going to rehash it. My other one was, this wasn't a blueprint of how he participated in 8 Super Bowl winning teams, which is what I wanted. And we've talked about this, but, it's how to become an effective manager. Where are the first person insights? Where are the hot takes or jabs at rivals? They're anecdotes, but they're hastily told and they lack any depth. I need juicy insights. I don't want to tell all. Like, this doesn't have to be a tell all memoir. I don't want 20 pages of a smear campaign of what happened between him and Kraft, but I could use 5. In chapter 2, motivation, he says, There's a thing in scouting that is known, but I'm not sure the league would be happy with me discussing it. I'm going to say it anyways. And I was like, nice. This is awesome. What are you going to tell us? And he says, does the player in question love football? I'm like, what? This is something that everybody knows, but the league wouldn't be happy with? Yeah, duh. I'm sure you want to know if the player loves football. That's important. It's not, he's acting like that was a big deal. So, I don't know. It bothered me, obviously. So, that's where I'm at.
For that same example, it would have been great to be like, here's a player, this guy is a 4th round grade that we gave. Here's all the players that were drafted before him. Here's why he's better. We determined that he liked football more because of X, Y, and Z. He did these things when other these players didn't do it. He's like what he did, in the community, all these things like that, where he can like give examples of why a certain person is more successful because they love football, and here's the DNA that shows that he did that. Like that's
or go into the Edelman stuff and talk about how somebody that didn't have all the measurables necessarily, and I know he talks about it with a couple of players like Edelman and James White, but more specifically during the draft, how you decide that their love for football is more important than all the other things that other teams are holding dear. We obviously can't cast the movie, but I do want to know who you think would play Belichick in the biopic, if there ever was a biopic of Bill Belichick.
Did you ever watch the FX show?
No.
There's some clips out there. I've never seen the show. I heard it's awful, but there's some clips of someone playing Belichick, and it's the most absurd thing you've ever seen. It was like a Bon Jovi clip of him like rocking out to Bon Jovi. I'm like, there's no chance this ever happens.
What?
It's pretty funny. You got to watch it.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Okay.
Who would play him? I have to think. Do you have someone off the top
I
of mind?
had Dennis Quaid. I think looks wise, pretty good. Dennis Quaid, obviously a very good actor. I think he could do the Belichick pretty well because he also has that little gruffness to him, or he can play that way. And if things go really off the rails for Belichick with this UNC situation, because there's scuttlebutt, he might not even be the head coach, and now he's potentially getting married to this 20-year-old whatever, and this biopic isn't going to sell to a studio and it goes direct to TV, we could just do Randy Quaid and it would just be crazy Belichick. So those things are both possible. So you could have Dennis, but also have Randy there as a backup.
I'm going to go enemy of the Gates.
Gene Hackman? He's dead.
Ed Harris.
Oh, okay. Oh, Enemy of the Gates. Enemy of the State. Yeah. Ed Harris.
Yeah.
Great movie. Wow.
Great movie.
Yeah. Vasily Zaitsev.
He can be super, super intimidating, but also be quiet while he's doing that.
Yeah.
Or I should have mentioned The Rock.
I was going to say, I actually was really surprised you went. And don't get me wrong, I love both movies, but I was kind of surprised you went Ed Harris, Enemy at the Gates, as opposed to. You were thinking about the scene when he's giving that little boy chocolate to tell him where the sniper is, and Belichick, that's like dollars when they're negotiating a new contract or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, Keith, who is this book for and what do you rate it?
Off the top, I mentioned that I'm not really sure who it's for. It's probably for like a general sports fan, I would say. Not necessarily like a diehard Patriots fan, not necessarily a person that doesn't like sports. In between that, and then someone that maybe someone that's younger that hasn't heard a lot of these older stories about the Patriots and things like that, and that are like starting a job or starting a managerial position and hasn't read any sort of self-help or anything like that. So I think it's for that person. It's not necessarily for someone that's like a super diehard Patriots fan or football fan or someone that's mature in their career that doesn't really need this.
Yeah, this person really would have to take their job very seriously to be like, oh, I'm going to glean these insights from Bill, and then I'm going to...
Outside of the typical work hard and do your job and all that stuff, like managing the salary cap isn't something that's really applicable.
Even as much as he tries to relate it to that. All right, well, hey, you suggested it. I'm glad we read it because it would be sitting there in the back of my mind as, hey, I wonder how that book is. So I am glad we read it.
I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. 6 Super Bowl rings out of 10.
Yeah, that's
3
fair.
out of 5.
I was going to say 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
So
okay, there we go. Yeah, that's I was just maybe being funny with that.
Yeah.
Our next book is We Are Back to Red Rising. Iron Gold, book 4 of Red Rising. Hard reset, which I really appreciate. That's hard to do.
And,
I respect him a lot.
A lot of new characters, and it's all broken up into kind of like different stories, and I'm sure they're all going to collide at some point, but it's definitely different than other stuff, which we'll see. Cool. Well, hopefully we'll be able to scurry our way through that. I think we're going to try to do the series. Or is that the plan?
I want to. I heard a lot of people say that like the book 6 is incredible. So
okay. So yeah. So we'll probably go 1, 2, 3 there. I'm not going to make any promises, but we're definitely going to do the series. So if you're interested and you're reading it, we still have a lot of time left. So feel free to jump in.
Maybe throw like a movie or something in between.
Yeah, because they're long.
They're long, yeah.
So jump in there with us, and we'll get back into some Pierce Brown Red Rising type vibes, which we love, and it's great for the summer while you're driving around. Listen to it. All right, cool. Well, Keith, thanks for chatting again. That was Bill Belichick, The Art of Winning, and we'll catch you for Iron Gold.
All right.
Bye now.